Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Luke here for our Showdown preview for Thursday Night Football between the Patriots and the Falcons. A little bit of a rematch of the infamous matchup when Tom Brady ended up leading that storming comeback. So, going to be quite a few eyes on this game tonight. We've got a million maker for tonight, as well as some other large GPPs on Draftkings. So, let's hop right into the player pool and our projections. So, what you're going to see on the screen here is going to be my Patreon projections. I do this for every main slate that we have. I do it for all the Showdown slates as well. So if you're looking for access to that, make sure to check out the link in the description. But starting off with the quarterbacks for tonight, I'm all right with both of them. You can see I have them both in my player pool, both at captain and at flex. And even though this is just a 47.5-point over-under, I do expect there to be a good amount of passing offense here. I mean, first and foremost, that Falcons defense is like Swiss cheese on the back end. You're going to get a ton of passing yards against them. So we know that Mac Jones is likely to have another good game. And of late, Mac Jones has looked a lot better. He's been extremely efficient. One of the highest completion percentages of all rookie quarterbacks we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years. And over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've seen that improve. So I expect that type of momentum to continue. Obviously understands that Bill Belichick offense is extremely nuanced. So as he gets more experienced in the system, we expect to see this type of progression from him. And we're seeing that in the stats. So good to see that confirmation there as well. And with Matt Ryan's been a little bit sneaky this year. He's been a lot better than people really want to give him credit for, averaging nearly 290 yards through the air per game. So even though he's being owned, I think it's well warranted. I'm okay putting either of them at the captain slot. I'm not going to be my favorite captains. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's some wide receivers, I think, that just give you a little bit more value in terms of bang for your buck. But both quarterbacks definitely in play. We'll talk at the end about a few of the stacking options you guys can go with if you decide to play one at captain. Let's move on to running back. As of right now, Cordarrelle Patterson siding towards doubtful. He's still questionable per the official injury report, but was extremely limited in practices. And as of right now, Ian Rappaport is stating that it's very unlikely that he suits up. So $10,200, not going to have to worry about him in terms of the slate. And what that means is that people like Wayne Gallman, but first and foremost, Mike Davis, are going to get a bulk of the carries. The reason why Wayne Gallman is more expensive than Mike Davis on the slate is because last week they were getting absolutely blown out of the water. You guys remember the Cowboys went in there, won 43-3. So by the mid-third quarter, they took all the starters out. So that meant Cordarrelle Patterson, got hurt right before halftime. Mike Davis got a bulk of the carries at the beginning of that third quarter. But when they realized there was absolutely no hope for the game, they took Mike Davis out of the game. They already had one running back go down and just relied on Gallman, who's their third string back. And they've reiterated it this week. The Falcons head coach said that he still is the third string running back. So Mike Davis, he's cheaper. He's also going to be the guy getting the bulk of the carries tonight. So I think he's definitely the one to go to at running back. You can see he's nearly 2x value. So definitely on the Falcons side of things, going to Mike Davis. I actually have him projected for just 11.2 points, which I think is a little bit, let's say, safe. I think that you could be a little bit more aggressive with that projection. He's obviously going to see an uptick in his carries out of the backfield, but more importantly, also going to see an uptick in his receiving production. Cordarrelle Patterson obviously caught 4.5 balls per game for this team, which made him a great play. But obviously, a lot of that usage is going to start to be funneled a little bit towards Mike Davis, which makes him an excellent play on the slate. Another running back I have my eyes on here, definitely going to be Damien Harris. I think he has legit chance to go out and be the optimal captain. Going to get about 20-25 touches in this game. He was questionable earlier on in the week, so should use a little bit of caution with him. Obviously could re-aggravate that injury, could end up becoming a problem down the stretch. So not like he's going to be a lock play or anything like that. Coming in with relatively low ownership as well. You can see a lot of the public is still a little bit worried about that injury. Definitely a solid play. I mean, this guy has run for over 100 yards 3 times this year, has quite a few touchdowns to his name. So somebody like Ramondre Stevenson, who would have been a great play if Harris was rolled out, is essentially a non-factor now. You can see have him projected for some touches here, 5.6 points, but that's not going to be enough to pay off. I do think that a lot of people are going to roster Wayne Gallman, which makes him a clear fade for me. The guy is going to be the backup running back. He's $8,400. And I'm sure there's people out there that think it's going to be a sneaky play, but as of right now, still projected for some ownership, not quite as sneaky as you would hope. 6.1% ownership. So it's, still single digits, but you'd really be hoping for a lot lower ownership because his points per dollar projection is atrocious. These two running backs for New England, the reserve backs, Brandon Bolden and JJ Taylor, they would have been in play if Harris was out. Obviously, Stevenson would have been the workhorse back, but they would have been much more willing to spread the carries. But with Damien Harris back, we've seen him be the bell cow back for this team before. I expect JJ Taylor to go in on some third downs, perhaps Brandon Bolden as well, but for Harris to get a majority of those carries. And for that reason, you might be willing to take a risk on Brandon Bolden. Still have to make sure he's active. So we don't have the inactives or actives list yet. So still a little bit early on in the afternoon, but he's expected to play. So if he's out, obviously that yes would go from somebody, Brandon Bolden to JJ Taylor. Either one would be okay as a flyer play though. Let's go down to the wide receivers. This is where it gets a little bit more exciting. At the running back position, we're really looking at the starters there, not really the backups. But at wide receiver, there is plenty of value here. So let's start at the top of the board, though. Then let's hop into the value at the end. We have Jacoby Myers at $8,000. He's completely mispriced. He should be closer to $9,000, even $9,500. Typically we see the best wide receiver on one of these slates crack the $10,000 mark. So the fact that he's only $8,000 makes him a great value play here. You can see he's not cracking or, popping in the projections too much, nearly a 14-point projection, but broke through for his first ever touchdown last week. And when they say when it rains, it pours, it could be extremely true in this case. So going to be buying in on Jacoby Myers, hoping that he can continue that streak. Kendrick Bourne's a little bit expensive, so he's not somebody I'm going to be prioritizing at captain. If he was $4,500 or $5,000 like he should be, he'd be a great value option at captain, but a little bit too expensive. Still going to be in my flex pool, though. Obviously, number 2 wide receiver for this team. Should see a good amount of targets here. Guys that I'm a little bit more excited about playing, first and foremost, Olamide Zaccheaus. We'll get to Russell Gage here in a second. Zaccheaus is the number 1 wide receiver for this team. Obviously, with Calvin Ridley out, not having to deal with Hayden Hurst here anymore. I mean, I guess Kyle Pitts, you could say, is the quote-unquote number 1 wide receiver, but he plays tight end, so Zaccheaus going to see plenty of the red zone targets whenever Kyle Pitts is being doubled. I like his upside here. He's only $5,400. I think he should be the one who's $6,600 rather than Russell Gage. Talking about Russell Gage, though, he's a little bit expensive, but he's still seen targets for this team. He's also a home run play threat, somebody who has a ton of speed, good yak ability. So I don't hate going to him either. I just like Zaccheaus a little bit more because he's a little bit of a safer play. And I think he brings a little bit more red zone upside to the table as well. Taj Sharp, not really huge on down here. You can see I have Taj as a no. $3,600. He's the clear number 3 wide receiver on this team. I'd rather take a chance on Frank Darby or Christian Blake, to be honest with you. Both those guys, a ton cheaper, have pretty much the same kind of upside as somebody like Sharp. So that's the case with him there. Let's talk about Nelson Aguilar. He's $5,000. He's a good price. He lets you create a relatively balanced lineup if you use him. He's going to see some targets from Mac Jones. He had a big catch last week, and we don't expect him to necessarily reproduce that kind of a big play threat. If he goes out there, gets you 6 catches for 50 yards, that kind of thing, that could end up being optimal in this type of low-scoring game. And again, in cash, he's giving you a lot of flexibility there. So Nelson Aguilar, we're going to talk about a cash value play, would probably be at the top of my board because we don't have much value on this entire slate, right? Damien Harris, if he was out, we would have had some of those New England running backs. We ended up having a few other guys injured. Obviously Cordarrelle Patterson's out, but they accounted for that, right? Wayne Gallman's priced up. Same thing with Mike Davis. So that makes somebody like Nelson Aguilar just that much more valuable. We don't have that many guys down low to go to. So that's why I like him on the slate, even at just a 10-point projection. Let's talk about Frank Darby and Christian Blake. They're going to see some snaps tonight. We know that for sure. Whenever they run 3 wide receiver sets, they're going to, essentially they're going to use 3 wide receivers. We know that, but they're going to cycle between these 5 wide receivers. They're not going to be the usual 3 or 4 wide receiver rotation. They really like to substitute in and out. And, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason for it other than rest. So guys like Frank Darby, you're going to see about 10 to 15% of snaps. Christian Blake, probably 5 to 10% of snaps. And at $200 and $400, if they get you one big play, that might be enough. So they're going to at least be in my player pool. As of right now, I'm siding towards Frank Darby because he's seen more targets than Christian Blake, also seeing more of a snap share. But I think they're okay value plays. And it really comes down to the lack of value, right? On most slates, they wouldn't really be in play. But the fact of the matter is that pretty much all the guys at the bottom of the board suck. So there's not many injuries to speak of as well. If N'Keal Harry ends up being out, right, that's only going to boost the guys up top. But the problem is they don't even play like the wide receiver 5 over there in New England. That's why I didn't even put him on the board. I forget the guy's name. It starts with an O. His last name is an O, and he's questionable himself. So that's why I didn't even put him on the board. He's a game time decision, not even likely to play. So really, you're looking at those guys on the Falcons side of things for value. On New England, not only are they not likely to see many snaps, they're also questionable. You don't even know if they're going to be suiting up. So they might really rely on those top three options. Pretty much ignore N'Keal Harry and all the other practice squad guys that they have. Let's move down to the tight end position. There is one glimmer of hope in terms of value. Let's actually start off with Lee Smith. Hayden Hurst is not going to be suiting up. We knew about that yesterday. So Lee Smith is going to be the backup tight end. And this Falcons team does run 2 tight end sets. I mean, Hayden Hurst was averaging 5.5 fantasy points per game. So if Lee Smith ends up absorbing all of that usage, he'd be a great value play at $200. So that's why he makes the list right here. One of the few flyer options you can take on this Falcons team. None of them are very sexy. None of them have very high floor projections or anything like that. But I think you can get by and at the very least create a very strong lineup with the other 5 spots. Sorry about the stud tight end though. Kyle Pitts, he's one of my favorite plays on the slate. I do expect him to get quite a bit of usage here. It's also a relatively good matchup against this Patriots defense. The only issue I could foresee, and this is something that Bill Belichick is extremely effective at, he'll take away the best part of your game. He does it week in and week out. Whether it's a certain singular player, whether it's a part of the game, he'll go ahead and take that away and make you operate elsewhere. And if you take a look at this Falcons offense, obviously Cordarrelle Patterson not expected to play. The clear target's Kyle Pitts. So not somebody I'm going to be locking tonight. I do see an avenue for him to fail, but in terms of opportunity, going to have more than anybody else on this team, arguably in the game, should get more targets than anybody else on the Patriots. So I really like him there at $9,600. He's going to be the most expensive skill position player at wide receiver, who's a wide receiver, but he's worth going to, in my opinion. Hunter Henry had the big week last week, had the 2 touchdown game. I had him in my main slate pool. I don't think he's going to have that kind of game again, right? This is somebody who's a relatively low usage player, more of a red zone target, and obviously had the big game last week with those 2 touchdowns, but not reproducible. He's at least going to be in my player pool, somebody I'll use as a differentiating option. He's not a priority for me, though. It's not a core play, but definitely not somebody I'm excluding from my pool. Johnny Smith is questionable. If he ends up not playing, I guess it gives a little bit of a boost to Hunter Henry. So Henry would be a little bit more attractive if Johnny Smith ends up not playing. But as of right now, expected to play, is questionable, and will end up making my player pool if he's active. He's only $2,400, so he would be one of the very few sources of value on the slate that we know is going to play a good amount of snaps. Right? He's going to play about 45% of snaps anytime that he suits up, potentially 60, 70% of snaps if they get to a run first attack. They're using a lot of 2 tight end sets. But yeah, if he suits up, he's a good value play. We just don't know if that's the case yet. Let's move down to the defenses here and the kickers. I like playing the Patriots defense. Obviously, Matt Ryan tends to be a little bit turnover prone. They're without their star running back. They don't have Calvin Ridley. A lot of things could go wrong for that offense. So Patriots defense could capitalize on one of those turnovers, take it in for a touchdown. I'm not going crazy using them at captain or anything like that, but we'll end up in my player pool. In terms of the Falcons, I'm not excited to play them at all. Let's move on to the kickers. Nick Folk's actually questionable. So he's been questionable the entire year, but he's questionable enough now that they actually activated a kicker off the practice squad. So we'll see a decision on that over the next hour or two whenever they do the inactives and inactives. Whatever kicker's active, though, play them, right? There's hardly a difference between their prices, $4,400. I believe the backup might be $4,200 or something like that. Either way, I think they're all right plays. Most of the kickers in the NFL are right around the same type of talent level. Younghoe Koo is a better kicker, though. He's an elite kicker in the NFL. He's also a little bit cheaper. So if I was going to choose between the 2 kickers, it would definitely be Younghoe Koo. We also expect this Falcons offense to be a little bit less efficient than the Patriots. Well, that may seem to be a little bit of a detriment to a kicker. It actually helps them, right? When an offense is a little bit inefficient, it's usually in the red zone. Getting yardage isn't a problem for most teams in the NFL. It's when you get down in the red zone, really cashing in. And the main beneficiary of a bad red zone offense is their kicker. So Younghoe Koo could see a little bit more opportunities tonight, particularly against a really stout Patriots defense. So that's all we've got here for the preview, guys. Wanted to make it quick, concise, get to everything as quick as possible. But if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like on the video. If you guys haven't subscribed, if you guys are new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future as well. So thank you again. Good luck for tonight, guys, and peace.